完胜日本队。中国女排收获世联赛4连胜。中新网北京6月4日电，记者邢蕊，2023年世界女排联赛日本名古屋站最后一轮的角逐今天结束。在中国女排与日本女排的强强对话中，中国队3-0完胜对手，收获4连胜。此前3场比赛，中国女排先后战胜巴西女排、德国女排和荷兰女排。今晚的比赛获胜后，中国队以4战全胜的佳绩结束了日本名古屋站的争夺。中国队本场比赛的首发阵容依旧没有变化，主攻李盈莹和王云璐，副攻袁心玥搭档王媛媛，接应龚翔宇，二传刁琳宇，自由人王梦洁。开局，中国女排迅速进入状态，并取得9-4的领先。局中段，日本队连续追分，中国女排主帅蔡斌叫了暂停。暂停过后，李盈莹4号位强攻得手，龚翔宇2号位打手出界，中国女排继续巩固领先优势。大比分落后的情况下，日本队变换阵容，但依旧无法挽回不利局面。中国女排25-18迅速拿下第一局。第二局，日本女排主动求变，双方竞争逐渐激烈。比分落后的中国队一传出现波动，失误也增多。8点16分落后时，中国队请求暂停。局末段，中国女排将比分追至22平。关键时刻，日本队出现失误，中国队双人拦网得手，袁心玥发球直接得分，中国女排27-25实现大逆转。第三局，中国女排更加积极主动，10-6领先的中国队气势如虹，日本队压力之下火力全开。局末段，中国队挽救2个局点。此后，中国女排双人拦网得分，李盈莹一锤定音，27-25结束比赛。今天的比赛是中日两队本赛季首次交锋。在去年的世界女排联赛第2周分站赛中，中国女排曾1-3输给对手。而9月的女排世锦赛小组赛阶段，中国女排3-0力克日本女排。本场比赛前，姑娘们已经做好困难准备。主帅蔡斌此前也透露，面对拥有主场之力的日本队，中国女排将根据对手的特点进行布防。值得一提的是，日本队也是中国女排在杭州亚运会的主要对手。今天的这场胜利，不仅为队员们积累了宝贵经验，也为队伍注入了信心。总体而言，中国女排的日本之行展示出了集训成果。4场比赛，姑娘们的发挥令人满意，从发球、一传到拦网和防守都有明显进步，攻传之间的配合也日益默契。虽然对阵巴西队和荷兰队的比赛过程略有起伏，但遭遇困难时，中国女排依旧能以我为主，沉着冷静应对不利局面。接下来，中国女排还将参加中国香港站和韩国水源站的比赛，队伍也将先后同意大利队、塞尔维亚队和美国队等欧美强队交手。希望中国女排再接再厉，赛出风格，赛出水平。晚安。
Victory over the Japanese team. Chinese women's volleyball team wins 4 consecutive victories in World League. China News Service, Beijing, June 4. Reporter Xing Rui. The final round of the 2023 World Women's Volleyball League in Nagoya, Japan ended today. In the strong dialogue between the Chinese women's volleyball team and the Japanese women's volleyball team, the Chinese team defeated their opponents 3-0 and won 4 consecutive victories. In the previous 3 games, the Chinese women's volleyball team defeated the Brazilian women's volleyball team, the German women's volleyball team and the Dutch women's volleyball team. After winning tonight's game, the Chinese team ended the competition in Nagoya, Japan with a record of 4 victories. The starting lineup of the Chinese team for this game remains unchanged. Li Yingying and Wang Yunyu are the main attackers, Yuan Xinyue's partner Wang Yuanyuan is the deputy attacker, Gong Xiangyu is the supporter, Dao Linyu is the second passer, and Wang Mengjie is the free man. At the beginning, the Chinese women's volleyball team quickly entered the state and took a 9-4 lead. In the middle of the game, the Japanese team continued to chase points, and the Chinese women's volleyball coach Kai Bin called a timeout. After the timeout, Li Yingying made a strong attack at position 4, and Gong Xiangyu went out at position 2. The Chinese women's volleyball team continued to consolidate its lead. With a large score behind, the Japanese team changed their lineup, but they still couldn't recover the unfavorable situation. The Chinese women's volleyball team quickly won the first game at 25-18. In the second game, the Japanese women's volleyball team took the initiative to seek changes, and the competition between the two sides became increasingly fierce. The Chinese team, which was behind in the score, fluctuated in the first pass and made more mistakes. When falling behind at 8-16, the Chinese team requested a timeout. At the end of the game, the Chinese women's volleyball team tied the score at 22. At the critical moment, the Japanese team made a mistake. The Chinese team succeeded in double blocking. Yuan Xinyue served and scored directly, and the Chinese women's volleyball team achieved a major reversal at 27-25. In the third game, the Chinese women's volleyball team was more proactive. The Chinese team leading at 10-6 was full of momentum, and the Japanese team was fully fired under pressure. At the end of the game, the Chinese team saved 2 game points. After that, the Chinese women's volleyball team scored a double block. Li Yingying made the final decision, and the game ended at 27-25. Today's game is the first confrontation between the Chinese and Japanese teams this season. In the second week of the World Women's Volleyball League last year, the Chinese women's volleyball team lost 1-3 to their opponents. In the group stage of the Women's Volleyball World Championships in September, the Chinese women's volleyball team defeated the Japanese women's volleyball team 3-0. Before the game, the girls had already prepared for difficulties. Coach Kai Bin previously revealed that facing the Japanese team, which has the advantage of home court, the Chinese women's volleyball team will deploy defenses according to the opponent's characteristics. It is worth mentioning that the Japanese team is also the main opponent of the Chinese women's volleyball team in the Hangzhou Asian Games. Today's victory not only accumulated valuable experience for the players, but also injected confidence into the team. Overall, the Chinese women's volleyball team's trip to Japan showed the training results. In the 4 games, the girls performed satisfactorily. From serve, First pass to blocking and defense, they have made significant progress, and the cooperation between attack and pass has become increasingly tacit. Although there were some ups and downs in the game against Brazil and the Netherlands, the Chinese women's volleyball team still took me as the main player when encountering difficulties, and dealt with the unfavorable situation calmly. Next, the Chinese women's volleyball team will also participate in the competitions in Hong Kong, China and Suwon, South Korea. The team will also play successively against European and American teams such as Italy, Serbia, and the United States. I hope that the Chinese women's volleyball team will continue to work hard, show their style and level. Over.